In June 2026, something happened that has never happened in human history before. A 12-year-old kid makes $500 from a homemade video game. Years later, he risks nearly all his money on rockets that explode and electric cars nobody wants. Most people would call that a terrible idea, and they were about to be right because he nearly lost everything while building rockets and electric cars. Like, his rockets exploded, his companies nearly went bankrupt, and he came dangerously close to losing everything. He almost went broke trying to make it happen. So the question is, how did he go from almost broke to becoming the first person in history worth $1 trillion? It all started with a kid, a computer, and a simple video game. Back in 1984, Elon Musk was just a quiet kid who spent most of his time reading books and learning about computers. While other kids were outside playing, Elon was stuck in his own world of science fiction and programming. He taught himself how to code, line by line, without anyone guiding him. At just 12 years old, he created a simple video game called Blastar and sold it for around $500. It wasn't a huge amount of money, but for Elon, it meant something much bigger. It proved that a kid with an idea and a computer could create real value. This was only the beginning, because life was about to throw something much harder at him than a school project. In 1995, Elon Musk stepped into the startup world just as the internet was beginning its rapid rise. Along with his brother Kimball Musk, he founded a company called Zip2, aiming to build online business directories for newspapers. But there was one major problem. They had almost no money. They couldn't afford fancy offices or a full team, so they worked out of a small, cramped, rented space, often sleeping right there on the floor. Some nights, they didn't even go home, instead showering at public gyms, grabbing cheap food, and going straight back to coding. It wasn't just a business at that point. It was pure survival. For years, nothing was certain. Success was far away, and failure always felt closer. But they refused to stop. They kept building, fixing, and pushing forward. And then, one day, everything changed. It was February 1999 when Compaq acquired Zip2 for around $307 million. Elon Musk's personal share came to about $22 million. At just 27 years old, he had finally made his first real fortune. But instead of slowing down or enjoying it, he did something almost no one expected. He took most of that money and risked it all again. And that single decision didn't just shape his next move, it pushed him toward an entirely new level of his life. With his Zip2 money, Elon Musk entered the world of online payments and founded a company called X.com. At the time, sending money over the internet felt risky and unfamiliar, and most people didn't trust it. But Elon believed the internet would eventually replace traditional banking systems. X.com later evolved into PayPal, and it quickly became one of the biggest financial revolutions of the early internet era. In October 2002, eBay acquired PayPal for about $1.5 billion, and Elon's payout was around $180 million. Now he wasn't just rich, he was extremely rich. He could have retired right there and lived a life of comfort forever. Instead, he started thinking about something that would scare almost every investor on the planet. But before that idea fully formed, everything was about to change. After PayPal, Elon Musk had more money than he had ever imagined. At just 30 years old, he could have lived a life of pure comfort, private jets, mansions, anything he wanted. Instead, he kept asking one strange question. Why is humanity still stuck on one planet? Around this time, Elon became deeply fascinated with space exploration, Mars missions, and the long-term survival of humanity. He read everything he could find about rockets, orbital mechanics, and space travel. And what he discovered shocked him. Space travel was extremely expensive, extremely slow, and controlled almost entirely by governments. No private company was seriously trying to change that. So he asked a question almost nobody else would dare to ask. What if rockets could be built by a private company from scratch? Most people thought it was a joke. Some thought it was impossible. But Elon didn't see rockets as fantasy. He saw them as the next level. In 2002, Elon Musk founded SpaceX. And from the outside, it looked like a disaster waiting to happen. Rockets are not easy to build. They are extremely expensive, extremely complex, and extremely dangerous. And Elon wasn't a rocket scientist. He was an internet entrepreneur. So when he entered the space industry, most experts didn't take him seriously. Then, the failure started. The first rocket launch failed, then the second, then the third. Each failure burned millions of dollars. Each failure brought more doubt, and the pressure kept climbing. People started saying openly that SpaceX would never survive. But Elon didn't stop, because he believed the breakthrough was just one launch away. And right when SpaceX needed every dollar it had, a second front opened up. In 2004, Elon Musk joined Tesla as an early investor and chairman. At the time, electric cars were widely seen as a joke, slow, expensive, and not practical. And most major car companies completely ignored the idea. But Elon believed the opposite, that electric vehicles were the future of transportation. So he kept investing more and more money into Tesla. At the same time, SpaceX was still burning cash with repeated failed rocket launches. Now Elon was fighting two wars at once, and both were extremely expensive. Then came 2008, the year everything almost ended. By 2008, Elon Musk was in serious trouble. Tesla was running out of money, SpaceX had suffered multiple failed launches, and the global financial crisis was hitting everything at once across the world. Even though Elon had been worth hundreds of millions of dollars, he was now dangerously close to running out of cash entirely. He later admitted that both companies were on the edge of failure at the same time. One more setback and everything could have collapsed. No Tesla, no SpaceX, no empire. Just complete failure and the end of the story right there. But then, something unexpected happened. Late 2008 became the turning point. SpaceX finally achieved successful missions and began securing major government contracts, giving the company its first real financial stability. Tesla also survived its crisis and slowly began building better, more advanced electric vehicles. Confidence started to return, step by step. Over the next few years, both companies began growing again, and slowly the world started paying attention. But nobody outside the company expected what would happen next. During the 2010s, Tesla transformed the entire auto industry. Electric cars went from a punchline to a global revolution. Sales increased rapidly. New models gained massive popularity. Investors rushed in. Tesla's stock price began rising at an unbelievable speed. Because Elon owned a large stake in Tesla, his personal wealth grew right along with it. Millions became billions. Billions became tens of billions, then hundreds of billions. He had become one of the richest people on Earth. But the biggest transformation of his entire career was still ahead. While Tesla was changing Earth's roads, SpaceX was quietly reshaping space itself. Rocket technology improved rapidly, and launches went from rare and risky to far more reliable and routine. The company expanded into satellites, global internet infrastructure, and space transport on a scale no private company had ever attempted before. What once looked like a risky, almost laughable idea slowly turned into one of the most valuable private companies on the planet. Investors began valuing SpaceX at record-breaking levels, and as that valuation climbed, Elon's personal wealth grew year after year until one historic moment finally arrived. Then came the night everything changed. In 2026, SpaceX finally went public in one of the biggest IPOs ever seen. Before trading began, analysts already valued the company in the hundreds of billions of dollars. But what happened next shocked even Wall Street. When shares opened on the Nasdaq, demand exploded instantly. Investors rushed in at a massive scale, pushing the valuation higher and higher within hours. The company was valued so highly that Elon's personal stake in SpaceX alone was worth more than $766 billion. Add his Tesla stake, worth around $280 billion, and his combined fortune crossed the $1 trillion mark in a single day. $1 trillion. That's more than the next several richest people in the world combined. So what does that actually mean? If you spent $27,000 every single day, it would take you about 100 years to spend $1 billion. To spend $1 trillion at that same pace, you'd need 100,000 years. A kid who learned to code alone with no one watching. A founder who slept on the office floor because there was no other option. An entrepreneur who had a fortune in his hands twice and chose to risk it both times. A man who, in 2008, came within weeks of losing everything he had built. And a builder who kept going when almost nobody believed it. Every single level looked impossible, until it wasn't. And now the question isn't really about Elon Musk anymore. It's about what comes next and who takes the next impossible idea and turns it into history. And just like that, the kid who once sold a $500 video game became the richest person in human history.